presentation, this podcast. So make sure to watch the whole thing if you're interested in understanding more about what some of this symbolism might mean. Now, there's several revelations out there. We're going to discuss the revelation in the New Testament, and there's several translations. I mean, you can look at the New International Version. You can look at the King James Version. You could probably even, there's a Latin. Is there a Latin? Is that the original, or is it Greek? Was Greek the original, or
well,
how
Greek
is it?
was the original New Testament, and Latin was the original Roman Catholic version, if you will.
Okay. All right. So we are going to discuss the Mark of the Beast, the New Jerusalem that descends from heaven. We're going to discuss the 7 vials, the 7 seals, the 7 angels. We're going to discuss the Antichrist, and really get a good understanding from somebody that's got tens of thousands, actually over 100,000 hours, according to the research that you've done in biblical prophecies and scriptures. I mean, you're 97 years of age, and you have been doing research now for 70 years. So it's incredible.
Exactly.
You look great, by the way, man. Rock and roll.
Exactly right. I am 50. I'll be 55 this year, and I've been doing it since I was 17, almost full time. Spent 20 years as a licensed minister, have a Bible college graduate. So yeah, it adds up over time. And looking back from this end, it doesn't seem like it's been that long, but it's been worth it. It's been fun. It's been challenging, but it's been worth it.
So let's start with Revelation at the very beginning. Describe where it came from, who put together Revelation that is in the New Testament.
All righty. Now, the first thing that I want to make everybody aware, there is no such thing as the book of Revelations. There's no S. It's the book of Revelation. Everybody wants to say Revelations, but it's the book of Revelation. And it's a very, very unique book, Rex, in that it's written by the Apostle John. And even though John was arguably the closest disciple to the Christ, for 40 years, the whole time the disciples were alive, John never wrote one word. For 40 years after the disciples were dead, really almost 60 years, John never wrote one word. The whole time Paul was writing, John never wrote one word. And it wasn't until about 30 years after Paul was finished writing that John finally decided he was going to sit down and write. And he wrote the book of John. He wrote 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, and he wrote the book of Revelation. Now, there's a lot of speculation as to how much of those books that he wrote, and I don't think he wrote all of them, but he did write a good portion of them. So Revelation was written with a very unique perspective. 60 years after all of the action of the New Testament, John sat down, old guy around AD 95 to 100, and wrote down what really is the last will and testament of the apostolic era. I think he warned us about false doctrine. I think he warned us about the rise of a false apostle. And I think he warned us of attempts to deceive us that were coming in the future. So Revelation really stands alone as the last will and testament of the apostolic era.
Another thing interesting also, as I brought up earlier, Albert Pike, a lot of people have read like one chapter on the internet that is in a book, Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, where he is discussing Lucifer. And he's like, is Lucifer the light bearer? Then why is he looked at as the dark lord? And he's asking questions, and he's looking at Luciferian doctrine as enlightening of the mind. If you look at the Latin definition, not as this dark lord, but if you read the whole page, it actually, you're like, oh, okay, he's actually, it seems to me, more of a Christian mindset. And, very fascinating individual, very intelligent. And it's interesting how his information has kind of crossed my path several times. But Revelation, he describes as there's more code in Revelation than an entire library of Gnostic knowledge, if you just know how to decipher it. So I think it'd be interesting to start with the 7 seals and the 7 vials. So the first one, I'm just looking this up.
And Rex, right to that point, Manly P. Hall says pretty much the same thing that Albert Pike said. And Manly P. Hall held that the book of Revelation was the attempt to synchronize the thoughts of the Gnostic, some of the emerging thoughts of the what we would call magical orders, and the thoughts of the Christ and of the disciples. So Manly P. Hall sees it as a great syncretic work, if you will, trying to bring together Gnostic thought, pagan thought, and Christian thought. And I don't think he's wholly wrong with that. I think it's a very interesting book, and I've had some interesting discussions with some folks that are leaders in the Gnostic community, because I think there's no doubt that John did use Gnostic thought. He used gematria. He talked about the organic light. He talked a lot of Gnostic stuff. And the interesting question is, he was talking about stuff that only Gnostic initiates knew. So either John was a Gnostic initiate, or the Christ was a Gnostic initiate, or the Christ knew enough about it to teach somebody about it, because Gnostics wouldn't tell these things to people that weren't initiates. And yet there's very clear Gnostic writings within the books of John, which would include Revelation. So I think Pike, Manly P. Hall, they were right on in calling our attention to some interesting, new, and diverse stuff within the book of Revelation.
Absolutely. And then also, you said that it is the book of Revelation, not the book of Revelations. It's interesting if you read through some of the Dead Sea Scrolls and some of these other texts that were not only taken out of the modern canon of the biblical canon, but also these Gnostic texts that were highly suppressed as well, that say the revelation of Adam or the revelation of Peter. But I am still trying to figure out if I think that John was a real person, or if it's more astrotheological and, referencing the stars and not the stars, but the planets, and the months. See, it's interesting because there's 7 planets that govern the 7 days, but then there's, 12 planets combined with the sun and the moon that govern the months. So there's different gematria and connections, etc. Mm-hmm. But if he was a real person and he did write this information down 60 years later, like, why did he wait so long?
That is the exact right question to ask, Rex, from an unbiased, scholarly, empirical point of view. If it was John, why did he wait that long? I think personally that it was John, and he waited, didn't want to write. He was more of a guy that stayed in the background, more of a support guy, but he realized he was about to die. He realized that the faith that the Christ had brought and that his friends had given their lives for was under severe attack. And I think he realized that he did not write and did not tell his side of the story, that the original true message of the Christ might be lost forever. That's my opinion, after all of this study and all of this time. But I certainly could not sit here and say that you're 100% wrong. It was John. There's no doubt about it. You make a very good point, because why did he wait so long? Why would he suddenly start to write? It does have a lot of astrotheological implication within it. I'm still convinced, though, that John did write at least parts of the book of Revelation, and that he did it in order to, as a last gasp effort on his deathbed, pretty much, to defend the faith that he was about to give his life for, and the faith that all of his friends had given their life for.
Okay. And then we get into the opening of the 7 seals. The first seal, the opening with the white horse, the symbols would be the crown and the bow. And also in Revelation 6:1-2, and I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the 4 beasts saying, "Come and see." And I saw and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a... Here's what's interesting. Let me ask you this question, Jeff. Mm-hmm. What does this mean?
That's the question? Just what does this mean?
Yeah, what does it mean?
Well, I struggled with this for years and years and years, and I think that I finally have the beginnings of an understanding, of this book. And I've shared this on, Coast to Coast AM, and got a lot of good feedback, a lot of positive feedback. But the real key, I think, Rex, to understanding the book of Revelation is to remember that whether it was John, or whether it was Bill or Bob or Sue or Becky or whoever it was that wrote the book of Revelation, they wrote it sometime around the end of the 1st century, somewhere around 100 AD. So when you're looking at this writer describe things that they're seeing, you got to remember, this is a person that was riding a donkey down dusty trails, living, in a 1st century AD paradigm. And he's trying to explain things and trying to describe things within the context of the world that he knew. And I think we make our great mistake by, now we're driving on the highway in smart cars, talking on smartphones, Siri or somebody else is telling us, know where to go and how to get there the fastest way. And yet we still look at the book of Revelation like the guy riding the donkey down the dusty road. I think in order to really understand the book of Revelation, we need to step back objectively, divorce ourselves from all of our preconceived notions, and look at it through 21st century eyes instead of first century eyes. If we can look at these symbols and these things that he saw and look at how what is seen might be described in 21st century terms, I think the reality of the book opens up to us much better than trying to think, oh, well, John saw this and he's describing this in a metaphorical fashion. Put on or describe it from 21st century terms, get out of his mindset, get into our mindset.
So did I just hear you say you think this is something more based on like technology, 21st century technology, versus looking at it as the Kabbalah or Kabbalistic point of view, the tree of life, if you break it down, Hermetics kind of aspect, the metaphysical?
Well, that's a great question, Rex. All of the scriptures have at least 2 or 3 layers. What's happening, what's implied, and what we're supposed to learn from that. And there's certainly great Kabbalistic lessons. There's certainly great Hermetic lessons. There's certainly great Gnostic lessons. There's certainly great spiritual lessons. But I think in the base, to really get an understanding of the book, we've got to look at it not through the eyes of a first century person, but look at it through the eyes of a 21st century person. What he's describing, what would we call it today? And your seals and your vials and your rider on the white horse and that whole scenario gives us a real good opportunity to practice that discipline and to see what kind of a road it might lead us down.
Well, yeah, and let's jump into that for a second, because it says that it's on a white horse he's going to conquer. So this dude on a white horse with a cool crown and a bow is going to conquer. And what does that mean? I mean, and somebody said, Rex, that's actually in representation to the bow and the crown means the constellation Sagittarius. And Rainbow White said that. I mean, I can't confirm that. That's a possibility. But even so.
What chapter and verse are you reading from, Rex?
Okay, so that's Revelation. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're at Revelation 6:3-4. Let's go to 6:3-4. That is the first. No, that's the second seal. I'm sorry. The first seal, 6:1-2, is where the first seal's opened up. The white horse with the bow, the crown, and then he went forth conquering and to conquer.
Right.
So what is he conquering? What is it? Like, what do you think that is?
Well, what I have, again, after much study, I think that I was brought up in the current Christian church. I was a Christian minister for 20 years, and most of the people look at the book of Revelation as future, and they're trying to look at all these future events and try to fit Revelation into these future events. But through study, I discovered that up until the 15th century, all of the church had always looked at Revelation as a book of history. It talked about the rise of the Roman Catholic Church, the oppression of people that were trying to follow the message of the Christ, and the whole battle between big-time religion, if you will, and people that wanted to have a more natural religion, or people that wanted to follow the message of the Christ. So if you look at it within a historical context, and these things line up very, very well, and we have to remember that up until the 1500s, everybody believed that. Then in the early to mid 1500s, the Reformation came along. John Calvin, Martin Luther, all of those guys, and they reaffirmed the historical nature of the book of Revelation and stated what a lot of people were thinking, that the Roman Catholic Church is the seat of Antichrist, is the seat of apostasy. And just a few years after that, the Jesuit order was born, and the Jesuits did something very audacious. They said, we're going to go against now almost 1,600 years of church history. We're going to start teaching that Revelation is talking about the future, not the past. And the reason to do that is to take the pressure off the Roman Church and off the Pope as being identified as the Antichrist and as the seat of Antichrist. And within just a few short years, Rex, these guys have turned history on its head. And now people that are Christians, people that say that they're daughters and sons of the Protestant Reformation, are now thoroughly teaching, preaching, and are willing to bite the head off anybody that disagrees with them, And they're now teaching what the Jesuits taught and not what the historical position of the church is. It's really a remarkable juxtaposition. It has actually turned history on its head. So if we read it historically, read it as the church read it for nearly 1,600 years, it tells us a very clear story about the Roman church going forth, conquering and to conquer, conquering pagan peoples and making them worship their religion, conquering people that were worshiping the message of the Christ, making them follow the Roman religion. And it really is ... Very simple, very easily understood, in my opinion, as the rise of man-made big-time religion overcoming people that wanted to worship naturally, you call it paganism, and people that wanted to worship and follow the dictates of the teaching of the Christ. That's not as sexy, maybe, but it's not as speculative, and we do have the side of history on our to fall back on rather than just speculation and Jesuit doctrine. Now, if you want to believe the Jesuit doctrine, that's up to you, but I think you also deserve to know that you're going against 1,600 years of universally accepted church history to accept the doctrine of the Jesuits, and it's doctrine that the Protestant reformers specifically stood against. So I find that pretty interesting.
What exactly is the Jesuit doctrine, though? Like, what does that mean?
The Jesuit doctrine is simple. It was written by a guy named Francisco Ribera, and he wrote a book about the Revelation and about the Apocalypse, and his whole thesis was that the book of Revelation is not a book of history. The church history had always said up until Revelation, the happenings of Revelation ended about 70 AD. And what Ribera says is, no. You have to realize that the book of Revelation is talking about a future Antichrist that's going to arise in what he called the last days. You've got to realize there's going to be this tribulation that's going to arise in the last days. You've got to realize there's going to be a rapture that's going to happen in the last days. This isn't about the Pope persecuting people. This isn't about the Roman church marching out with the Roman legions and killing people and making them follow their religion. This isn't about killing Gnostics and killing Cathars and killing people that don't believe or bow down to the Catholic doctrine. It's about something that happens in the future. So quit blaming the Pope. Quit blaming the Roman Catholic Church, because it isn't really history. They've been wrong for 1,600 years. We're right. We've got a new revelation. Move this all to the future. The Pope really loves you, Rex, as she would say. He loves you so much, and he cares so much for you, and he wouldn't do any of those things to you. This is a bad guy that's going to do it in the future, and they're going to build a new temple there. And don't worry about that. It's future, but don't blame the Pope anymore.
Join the dark side. That's
well, whether it's a dark side or not, it's a different side.
No, I think it's, you brought up the Pope and how much he loves us. I mean, that's what I imagine. If you meet him, he's gonna be like, "You will join the dark side because it is strong." But anyway,
Rex, kiss the ring.
So you should have read the comments earlier. Somebody's like, Jeff has a red and black checkerboard behind him, and he's got the ring on. What is he? All you sheeple, wake up. He's the devil right in front of you.
They didn't even mention the crystal ball?
Yeah, he did. The crystal ball was mentioned too.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Because, I put those things up there because I want to prod somebody. It would really disappoint me if no one saw it and got upset by it. It's a deep, dark Illuminati plot, Rex. My neighbors were complaining because I'm doing podcasts all day long. It was too loud. So it's an Illuminati plot for me to put acoustic tiles on my studio so that my neighbors don't yell at me anymore. And I just happen to really enjoy red and black. So it's clearly a reptilian shapeshifter, Illuminati, conspiracy theory, Jesuit plot that I'm obviously advancing here with all of this imagery and stuff.
You've reached places when people on the internet call you a reptilian shape-shifting Jesuit shill. You know that you're actually, just getting on somebody's nerves, and that makes you feel good a lot of the times. But
Rex, there's video of both you and I on the internet shape-shifting into reptilians.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Great stuff.
Okay, sorry, I was communicating with somebody real quick, but I think that it would be interesting to get to, let's talk about the second seal now. Let's get to seal number 2.
Okay.
And this one's also very interesting. And this one says, this is Revelation 6:5-6. Mm-hmm. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see." And I beheld, and to a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, "A measure of wheat for a denarius, and 3 measures of barley for a denarius, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." What does that mean?
Well, again, Rex, I don't have the sexiest interpretation of that, but if you take the totality of the book of Revelation, you've got the Roman army that's marching out. You've got the Roman, priests and clergymen that are going with it. And, an edict was made that you cannot buy or sell, and we're going to get to the mark of the beast, I'm sure, unless you are using the coinage of the realm, of the coinage of the Roman realm. A coin that was issued by Caesar is all that you could use. And if you didn't use that coinage, you couldn't buy or sell anything. And they wouldn't give you any of that unless you renounced your former faith and embraced the faith of the Roman Church. So you literally could not buy or sell unless you were going to embrace the faith of the Roman Church. And if you can't buy or sell, if you don't embrace the church and you can't buy or sell, it's not going to take long for you to go hungry, and it's not going to take long for you to die. I believe, like 1,600 years of church history believed, that we are looking at the rise of the Roman Church and the persecution of peoples that did not want to go along with the Roman rule in this particular scripture that we're talking about. Now, we'll get into some future stuff further on down the road. I think John did write about some future stuff, but what he was writing about was warnings of a final false flag attempt to deceive us.
So the black horse would be like the Vatican, and then the balances that are in the hand of the black horse are no.
Well, the white horse would have been more like the Vatican and the Roman army going out to conquer and to conquer. The black horse is death. The scales are, the weighing of you're being weighed in the balance. If you don't, line up, you can't buy, you can't sell. So the white horse goes out conquering and to conquer. The black horse goes out. It represents famine and death if you don't get on board.
Okay. And then, now here's one thing I find interesting is one of the futuristic views is the possibility of, plague and war, something like World War III possibly. And it's interesting because these metaphors can be timeless in the sense that they're cyclical. So something that happens 1,000 years ago, it's like meet the old boss, and then something that happens similar 1,000 years later, but it's, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Grab my Bible real quick, right?
Yeah, please do. While you're grabbing that. So I'm thinking to myself, now we're going to get to the third seal that discusses, and actually the fourth seal is, so the third seal, and when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, "Come and see," and I beheld to a black horse, and he said that sat on him a pair of balances in his hand. Oh, that's the third seal. So I actually skipped the second seal.
And you're still in Revelation 6, right?
Yeah, well, let's go back to the second seal because I skipped that, and that's the red. Another horse that was red, and power was given to him to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. One there was given unto him a great sword. So I totally skipped the second seal. Dang it.
And that's important because, you got the white horse going out, conquering to conquer. And according to 1,600 years of church history, that's emblematic of the Roman religion going out and conquering and taking over. The red horse is like war. They're going out there. And what did it say he was doing, that red horse? That's chapter 6.
So let's see here. Revelation.
Here it is.
6:3-4.
And it was red, and there was power to take peace from the earth, that they should kill one another. There was given unto him a great sword. And that's a key right there, that great sword. If you know anything about Roman history, the first weapon of mass destruction, the first great advance in military weaponry was that Roman short sword. That Roman short sword allowed the Roman soldiers to be much quicker, much faster, to get inside the long swords of all their opponents. And literally that Roman short sword was the weapon of mass destruction that conquered the world. And this is a very clear statement, and that's why the church has thought it was this so clear for 1,600 years. The Roman church going out, the Roman legions going out, marching as a white horse, taking away peace, taking away your right to choose your faith, taking away your right to be pagan, taking away your right to be Gnostic, away your right to be a Cathar. And it was repent or perish. Do you want the edge of the sword, or do you want the Eucharist? It's your choice. Pick one. And this is exactly what was going on. The historicist interpretation does have the benefit of lining up rather perfectly with the historical record, Rex.
Do you think that it is deeper than that? Do you feel that this might also be a code for future events that's based upon cyclical timelines and these astrological alignments?
I certainly allow for the possibility of that. I really think that, again, this is from a lot of study, that these events are talking about the rise of Roman Catholicism and the defeat of people being able to follow and worship according to their conscience and being herded under the fear and guilt control matrix of the modern church. And when we get into Revelation 19, 20, 21, we're talking about John describing what to him was, and what to us might be here, not future, but current, a last false flag attempt to deceive us. But I really think that while there's lessons to be learned here, there's parallels to be drawn here. I think the astrotheological argument is strong. It does have a lot of great implications. The original reason for the writing of the book of Revelation was to be a historical recounting of the rise of the Roman church. And somebody says, well, why didn't they just say that plainly? What you got to understand is that Revelation was written in a country that was under Roman military occupation. And there was guys called censors that read every single word that was published to make sure there was nothing seditious being published against the Roman Empire. So you can't just sit down and write, these dirty, stinking Romans are going out and killing everybody that won't become a Roman Catholic. You can't write that. Not only will it not get published, your head will no longer remain attached to your shoulders. So you write things in a little bit of a code. You write things in a little bit of a allegorical or metaphorical way that allows it to get through the Roman censors, but it still allows it to convey the sense of what's happening to people, especially, Rex, when these people are looking around and watching it happen all around them.
You know, another thing too, so I want to get into all these sills, and I want to talk about some of these weird, for example, the locusts that fly around with crowns and iron breastplates.
Yes.
You know, I was just going to say real quick, some people think those are like, you know, drones. Some people think they're demons. Some people think it's, you know, allegory. So I can't wait to get your take on that. But let's get to...
That's exciting stuff.
It is. It's fascinating. So let's talk about...
You're right. That is part of the warnings of John about a future false flag where they're going to be trying to deceive us using many of those same things that you're talking about right now.
Right. And Sill 4, actually, when you read Sill 4, it says Sill 4 has the horse with death on it.
Yep.
And Sill 4 also, okay, so the fourth Sill, his name that sat on the horse, a pale horse, was death.
Yep.
And then hell followed him. And then power was given him, a fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, hunger, with death, and with beasts of the earth. So a quarter of the earth. That's a lot. Hello.
And if you can't buy food, Rex, you're going to have famine. You're going to have death. If you stand up and say, no, I'm not going to follow the Roman religion, you're going to get a quick death. If you run and hide in the wilderness, you're going to run into some beasts that are going to kill you. And I should trace down the exact number of people that were killed under the rise of the Roman Empire. But I bet you 25% of the conquered population being killed is probably not a number that's out of line under any occupying army moving in and conquering. So I'll bet you got 100% of the people there. The Roman army marches in, convert or die, not to mention the ones that get killed in the war. Yeah, it's got to be close to 25%, Rex.
And that would represent the pale horse in your eyes. Their armies basically saying, okay, you can't have food because you're not kissing the Pope's ring.
Especially when you get to the number, you know, the mark of the beast, it's 666. The literal rendering of that in the Greek is the impress of the coin or the seal of Caesar. So they're literally saying, if you don't have and use the Roman coinage, and to do that, you had to convert to the Roman religion, you ain't eating, brother. So it's very, very clear in context. And remember, a text without a context is a pretext. So that's why this belief held firm for 1,600 years, Rex, because it makes sense linguistically, it makes sense from the text, and it lines up perfectly with the events that we know happened from history.
Well, it's so encoded as well that you could almost link anything to it as long as you got certain parameters right. You know, you could say, well, that describes a Borg cube descending from outer space. Like if you read about the New Jerusalem, it kind of sounds like the Borg cube, but it's using more elements and gold and different rubies and jasper and all sorts of cool stuff. But I mean, I even broke it down to the size. If you base it on these ancient measurements at 1,500 miles by 1,500 miles, and then you take the 144,000 people or the 144,000 that are saved, and they get into this Borg cube, I'm sorry, this New Jerusalem. And then I was even able to decipher the square footage and the amount of acreage that each person gets. And it was a very symbolic number. I'm looking for it right here. So, okay, 1,500 miles is the size of this New Jerusalem. 144,000 people would be saved. Each person would have 144,000 acres as well. So
now, Rex, did you determine that it was going to be a cube or more of a pyramid or more of a tetrahedron?
I'm assuming it looks like a cube to me by the description that I gathered. That's what I put together. And you know, another thing though is it talks about these different foundations and stuff like that. But I want to get to that in a minute if we can. Let's stay on the timeline here so people can, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, and remember, Rex, if for 1,600 years the church believed it was going to be a Borg cube, it becomes a much stronger argument. If that's a new argument that doesn't have any historical veracity, then maybe it's not such a strong argument. But the argument of the historical position of the church, to me, is a strong one in that it was held for 1,600 years. And there were Rexes, and there were Jeffs, and there were Waynes, and there were Heidis and Jennies over this 1,600 years too. But they were all basically in agreement with this. So it does have the compelling correlation with history for me. And it does have the compelling belief that for 1,600 years it held strong. And it does have the compelling belief that it was one of the base beliefs of the Protestant Reformation as well, in my mind.
Now, also, I think that a Borg cube descending from outer space, though, with jasper and rubies and gold and like crystal floors and like this being that's thrown that has eyes all over it, and there's these beings that worship it. I think that that's a much more exciting and fascinating interpretation, though. But okay. But another thing that I want to bring up here real quick is sorry, I was just communicating with somebody over here.
That's all right.
My labs. But and this is Revelation 6, 9, 11, 9, 1, 1. And when he had opened the fifth seal, then he saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God. So what is that like representing? 9/11, interesting that is the
that is interesting. Also. But if you look at it again, just strictly objectively, the Roman Church marches out, seal 1. You know, seal 2, they're saying you gotta take the mark of the beast, or you've got to do what we tell you to do if you want to eat. There's war, there's famine, and when you got war, you got famine, you got pestilence, and you got people being killed for the word of God, which is exactly what I'm talking about. People that are wanting to stay true to the message of the Christ, to the Gnostic message, to the Catholic message. It makes perfect sense that these are people that are being killed by the Roman Church because they won't go along with the Roman plan. They're martyrs for the faith, literally. And again, this all happened in this specific order throughout the rise of the Roman Empire from 300 to, 12, 13, 1400. It all happened just exactly as it's being depicted here. And that doesn't mitigate the very interesting atheotheological applications that can also be drawn on a spiritual and metaphorical level.
Yeah, I think that it's just so intertwined. I feel that these texts have a much more of a metaphorical aspect. Maybe not even necessarily this physical cube that descends or this New Jerusalem. Maybe it's more of a spiritual level. That's kind of what I am interpreting now, especially after reading through Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike. But I want to talk about the next revelation here. And this is, but I think what you say, though, makes absolute sense, too. You know, I feel like it's multifaceted. I feel like what you're saying is hitting it spot on. And I also feel like there's a a spiritual level as well. Like it's timeless. This information can resonate with people 1,000 years later, 10,000 years later because of these cyclical events. I still feel it's linked to astrotheological timelines. Now,
I agree with you 100%.
Even if, okay, so let's say that Jesus or Yeshua did die on a cross and was resurrected from the dead, the 3 nights, 3 days, etc. That's linked to also astrotheologically the movement of the sun and the earth. And, these rituals could go hand in hand. And I think it could be the most powerful set of rituals in magic and hermetics and mind over matter, and maybe just putting a label on it, and especially because of these industries that have created these doctrines of, oh, you think for yourself, that's the devil thinking, and you are now possessed by the devil, so you need to repent and give more money to the church. But, maybe these they're all linked together. So let's go back to this point right here.
Rex, you've got your seals that we're talking about, which to me shows very clearly the rise of the Roman Church, the killing of people. And as you get into seal 6 and 7, it's exactly what happened at the Roman destruction of Jerusalem. What if the seals here are showing us the historical events that actually happened, and astrotheology is showing us more of a spiritual, more of a metaphorical, more of a not just a nuts and bolts of things, but an actual spiritual take on it, or an actual look beyond just the mundane and just the black and white, to be able to understand what's going on cosmically, what's going on, within the skies and with the stars, and to show, as they said in Genesis chapter 1, that the stars, the planets were actually put there to show us the plan of God and things that were going to unfold. So like you said, it's so deep. And there's at least 3 different levels. And for us to say, oh, this is the way it is, and we don't believe what anybody else says, we really rob ourselves. And I think we move dangerously close from ignorance to stupidity. And I don't think any of us want to be there.
Well, let's talk now about you bring up a really good point, multitude of good points. I appreciate that. And let's talk about this 6th seal and the great earthquake. So it says there's a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, which, ladies and gentlemen, guess what? A super blue blood moon is coming up following a total solar eclipse. Actually, it's the precursor to a total lunar eclipse, not solar eclipse. I'm sorry, total lunar eclipse. This hasn't happened in 150 years. Last time this happened, 1866. So I guess a little bit over 150 years. There were incredible opportunities given to the people of the United States of America, these civil rights, and it was just a year of change and a year of a new coin. The half dime became the nickel. So does that mean that these cryptocurrencies are going to start going wild? And which, by the way, that's time for me to give a quick shameless plug, ladies and gentlemen. You've been waiting for it. I know you've been waiting for it. A quick shameless plug. You really should check these guys out for real. TradeGeniusAcademy.com. Trade Genius Academy is offering specials for Elite Project listeners. If you want to become a cryptocurrency expert, check them out. And in just a couple of days, I'm going to have an expert on the show discussing these cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, wallets, blockchain, mining, etc. It's going to be exciting. So check them out. TradeGeniusAcademy.com. Okay, shameless plug.
Rex, are you still working with the gold people as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Noble Gold Investments, awesome. And there's so many good opportunities. And the more sponsors we have with the Elite Project, the more shows we can do. So the more entertainment and news and fringe opportunities, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure to support our sponsors. And also, so the earthquake. Has it happened yet? The sun, has it blacked out yet?
All of that happened at the destruction of Jerusalem.
What's that?
All of that happened at the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70.
Talk about that.
Historical record.
Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, think about it. We're just reading it here. We're reading out of verse number 12. And it says there was a great earthquake. Josephus tells us in Antiquities that there was a great earthquake in Jerusalem as the Roman armies overwhelmed the city and overwhelmed the temple. Whether they're speaking metaphorically or not, I don't know whether there really was a great earthquake, but history does record it. And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair. What do you think would happen, Rex, if the whole city's on fire and all the smoke is going up? What's that going to make the sun look like? And as the night falls and all the smoke is going up, what's that going to make the moon look like?
Now, when did this happen then?
AD 70, when the Roman army had surrounded Jerusalem, besieged Jerusalem, and they actually finally went in and just burned the whole place to the ground. The Christ said that there wasn't one stone left upon another of the temple. They broke through the temple doors, which, interestingly enough, were the key to break down those doors was from the second in command of the General Titus, who was Jewish, whose dad had donated the doors and had created the plans for the doors. So think about the irony of that. A Jewish general working under Titus, whose dad paid for the doors, built the doors, designed the doors, and there he is knowing how to defeat the doors and defeat the Jews and ultimately destroy the temple. How ironic is that?
It is. And do you think that they, the aristocratic bloodlines and those in the know had some connection to these events based upon previous events, etc., and they just knew how to follow the timelines? Maybe it was from divine source. They kind of encapsulated that.
Or is it just cyclical, like you've said, and they've been around long enough and they've been taught by beings and entities that have been around long enough? Some people sure seem to have the know, Rex, and we're trying to do our best to decipher this, but it seems like there's always been shadowy cabals. There's always been, dark men, men in dark smoke-filled rooms that understand what's going on and know how to leverage and lead and guide, whether they're reptilians, whether they're shapeshifters, whether they're just members of secret societies that are keeping all the secrets for themselves. It always seems like there has been these shadowy cabals that seem to know more than the general population.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. Sorry, I didn't know you were looking at me when I was doing that. That was just, yeah. Here's another interesting one. And the heavens departed. No, wait. And the stars of the heavens fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs. What does that sound like, ladies and gentlemen? Well, what does it mean? Like the stars of heaven fell unto the earth? That's pretty deep. I mean, that's hardcore. Right.
And we know that stars, we know what stars are. And we know that stars could not literally fall to the earth and have there still be an earth there. So it's clearly pretty, metaphorical language. So, it becomes to the point where we wonder, how the heck can we figure out this metaphorical language? And when you go to Matthew 24, which is clearly talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, you've got the same exact things, Rex. The sun's dark and the moon doesn't give its light. The stars fall from heaven. The powers of the heaven are shaken. So it's showing us, I believe, tying us back inextricably from the text. If you just follow the text, it's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem under the armies of Titus in AD 70.
Okay, and then what is the... Well, I think I have an idea. Everything you're going to... All these sills that are released, you feel are connected to... We've got one more. Let's finish this up here. So the silence in heaven, the space of half an hour, and this is after there were earthquakes, mountains that are moving, political people, very prestigious people hiding in mountains. That's all described in the sixth sill. Chief captains, mighty men, etc. And then the Lamb is discussed in there. The wrath of the Lamb. So is the wrath of the Lamb once again the Vatican?
Well, I can't go by let this opportunity go by. When I was a preacher, and I wasn't as nice a guy then or as smart as a guy, but when it says there was silence in heaven for half an hour, Rex, I used to say that was proof positive that there wouldn't be any women in heaven. But I don't say that anymore.
Bazinga! Ladies and gentlemen, now we just lost half the audience.
I know. That's why I don't say it anymore. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, they're like, Rex, what are you doing discussing this? That's unbelievable. Oh, that's okay.
That's okay.
That's all right. Get a tinfoil hat. You'll be fine.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you have to, everybody's interpretation is probably equally valid. I just think that, my job is to stick to the text, tell you what the historical position of the church is, tell you what the position of the simple original language literally translated into English is. And again, I'm not here to convince anybody to believe one way or the other. I'm here to give you all the information you need so that when you make your decision, you're making your decision not based upon what your pastor told you, your priest told you, your grandma believed, your grandpa believed, your mom believed, but you're actually getting as much objective information and data as possible. And I think the more data and information you have, the better decision you're able to make. Call me crazy, but I think more data makes for better decisions.
Oh, I knew it. I knew you were a Jesuit shill because ignorance is bliss. I mean, just read the comments. Ignorance is bliss. And if you question things, you're from the devil. You're
Yep.
from the devil, Jeff. You need to watch it, man. People are starting to wake up to you. Be careful.
Yeah.
All right. So this is,
But it gets real
ladies and gentlemen, just
exciting,
look at the
Rex.
background. The devil's coming out right now. You can see it. You can see it. The devil.
And
sorry.
I apologize for my rather mundane interpretations up to this point, but as we get to now start talking about, you know, the white horse appearing and the armies of heaven and, you know, the vials being poured out on the earth, now it really gets exciting. Now it really kicks up a notch, and now we can really talk about the future and maybe wax a little bit maybe use our imaginations a little more and start thinking like 21st century people, understanding what these crazy things could be.
Well, I'm kind of disappointed, Jeff, because I thought we were going to basically be putting together the script for the next season of the X-Files. But hey, if you want to be all, you know, serious and bring the, you know, the historical documents and the research that you've done for, you know, tens of thousands, over 100,000 hours, then fine, be that way. I mean, you want to be no fun, that's fine. Okay, that's cool. I really appreciate that. I haven't heard that version before. I've heard bits and pieces of it. So I am actually very happy that you have come on the show and discussed this with us, because I think this is so important to get another version that isn't quite as science fiction like. Although I love good conspiracies. I love
the science fiction's coming, Rex. But isn't it funny that the thing that's been the historical position of the church for 16 centuries and only just a little more than 3 centuries has become forgotten?
Look at how much people have forgotten over the past 20, 30 years. I mean, people don't even remember what's for dinner, and they're on a schedule. So
it's that microwave mentality, isn't it?
Well, they got to be like, okay, let me see what my smartphone is thinking for me. Did you see the podcast earlier today? They got smartphone technology, AI technology that's predicting what you're thinking. And pretty soon
I saw that. That scares me to death, Rex.
You will cross the street now. And then you like cross the street, you don't look, and then the semi-truck hits you and it's like, ha ha, silly human. Ha ha, silly. All right, anyway.
And Rex, the only question I have in my mind, well, not the only one, but the question I have in my mind right now is, how far are human beings willing to go to allow technology to do their thinking for them?
Oh, dude, just look at it. It's obvious. I mean, most people don't want to think, and you give them facts. You give them opportunities to find the facts for themselves, and they don't want to do it. It's like, no, don't tell me that. It's going to break out my paradigm. I want to stay in the matrix. I want to eat this steak, even though I know it's fake. Like, what's his name was saying when Agent Smith was saying, hey, I'll pull you out.
I know this isn't a real steak, but yeah.
He wanted to go back in. He's like, I don't like it out here. It's freaking me out, man.
When did this start happening,
Rex? But it tastes freaking good.
When did people decide we don't want to know the truth? Just tell us a cute little lie.
Yeah. How does that song go from the 80s? Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. You should sing it, Jeff. I think
there we go. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to believe that, and I mean, your channel, I don't know how many you have, 500,000 subscribers yet or whatever. I got over 10,000 today, so I'm very excited about that. You know, Wayne's got 15,000 or so. You know, Heidi and Trisha and Jenny, they're all coming on strong. So I'm feeling very encouraged that even though it seems like most of the people are ready to be assimilated, there's still a good group of us, Rex, that are refusing to be assimilated, and it's a growing group every single day. So I remain very optimistic and very encouraged. And thank you for your leadership as we continue to battle to be real humans. I think we're the last generation of real humans, and with your leadership and some of the rest of us, we can actually win this thing, I believe.
Well, I mean, I'm just enjoying my, cookies that Grandma just made for me. So it's still, I don't know about leadership. You don't want to follow me, you guys. It's scary up here. I mean, it's like all bizarre. I walk outside, shock therapy from my labs. You got these mantis aliens and you got these reptilians that are shapeshifting. It's very bizarre. But thank you for that. And we're all having fun. You know what's great is people are leading themselves. And they're kind of like, they're finding other people that resonate with them, and they're like, hey, we've been lied to for so long. Isn't this interesting? And be like, I was thinking the same thing. Hey, it's nice to meet you. So one thing that I do think is fun about Leak Project is just so many people are coming together from around the world, literally. I mean, this is a global audience. People from all over the world are connecting and coming up with great ideas. I get schooled every single day at Leak Project. People leave a comment or an email or something that just blows my mind. So thank you, everybody that's a part of this. And, Jeff, you're definitely a part of this as well. I like being a part of the Christian Whistleblower channel sometimes. It's we've done a lot, I feel, helping certain people kind of understand there's other possibilities that aren't just in these specific scripts that have been designed to kind of imprison your mind, which is very unfortunate, as people should have the right to think for themselves. But, I think we should jump into Revelation 9:3. And this talks about the locusts. This is where it gets interesting, folks. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And the shapes of those locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. And on their heads was of crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And so they were going around stinging people, but they weren't killing them. So what the heck are these things? I mean, were they around back then too? Were they like jumping out?
Well, Rex, I mean, we're talking about a guy in 100 AD trying to describe something that he had no idea what it was. But just for a minute, let's forget about what John thought he was seeing. If you describe those things in exactly those terms you just described them, in 21st century terms, what does that sound like, Rex?
I think it sounds like some pretty cool drones that have some biotechnology. So they were made in a laboratory and, they got released somehow, by accident, and they're just having fun. Like, let's get that guy.
And don't you find it interesting, Rex, that these things are employing non-lethal armaments?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're tasing them, Yep.
And if you read, it's only the bad guys that are getting tased. Don't worry, like we just had the drone ranger, President Obama. Well, we're only going to kill the bad guys. But who gets to decide who's the good guys and who's the bad guys?
What happens when AI decides who the bad guys are?
Look at that, Rex, from a 21st century mindset and just read what it says.
It's all connected to the cloud, I mean, it's like,
sounds exactly like a fleet of drones or maybe helicopters. That's exactly what it sounds like. And John's warning us, I think, watch out, guys. They're going to try to use this to fool you and give you and try to get you to cede your sovereignty, cede your divinity, and give up your place as divine, sovereign, and free human beings.
Let's jump into now Revelation 13.
All righty.
And the beast. So I would like you to read this because you've read these scriptures more than I have. I've read Revelation probably a dozen times approximately. I've read the Bible from front to back once, and I've gone through it many times. But you've got so much more. You've read it a lot more times than I have. You used to actually do sermons, so you would read the Bible in front of people. And did you like that at first? I mean, did you really feel passionate about it? And then the longer you did it, the more you kind of started to get a feeling of manipulation based upon the most powerful trigger there is like this carrot at the end of the stick of eternal damnation or eternal bliss.
Rex, for so many years, I was doing it because I 100% believed in it. I thought that it was the truth. I thought that it was the right way. I thought it was heaven or hell, turn or burn. And man, I used to preach it hot. I used to preach it hard. I used to be able to take one heck of an offering. I cast out a lot of devils. I did a lot of healings, and I was a pretty doggone good evangelist. And everything was great until I started reading the Bible for myself in the original languages. And I started seeing, wait a minute, that's not a very good translation of what that Greek was. Or wait a minute, that's not a very good translation of what that Hebrew said. Or what really tripped me up, Rex, what really put a monkey wrench in my gears was, well, Jesus says this, and Paul says that about the same thing. So what I couldn't figure out was it looked like Jesus had a religion and Paul had a religion. And I'm thinking, why don't we tell anybody about these things? And that was really the straw that broke the camel's back. And when I could no longer reconcile why there was a religion of Paul and a religion of Jesus, and we weren't letting people know about that. We were trying to make them think that it was all one thing. And then when I found out that the whole New Testament was jumbled up, that it's not presented anywhere near its chronological order, and the only reason to do that is to keep people from understanding how it was written, when it was written, and for keep people from understanding that the New Testament was a Twitter war between the disciples of the Christ and the disciples of Paul. So when I saw that, I thought, you know what? They are selling us a lie. They are not telling us the truth. They're trying to get us to believe their story, and it's a fear and guilt control matrix. They want to keep us afraid. They want us to think we're sinners, that we got to have salvation. They've got the only Savior, and the truth was something very different. Now, you have the perfect right to accept the religion of Paul or the religion of the Christ. I think you have a right to know that there's a difference.
Okay, so if you would, let's talk about Revelation and the beast. No man might buy or sell. You think that the mark of the beast was actually just referencing at that time these coins that were linked to Caesar. But if you look at the mark of the beast in a sense of, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, they just use different technologies now. You have to have an ID to rent a hotel. You have to have a credit card. You need, pretty much everybody has a smartphone now. So I'm wondering if the mark of the beast is more along the lines of just the latest, greatest technologies. But what is the beast then? And then I can get into, I want to discuss also in a minute, I think this is going to really trip some people out. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, but when you get into our physical meat suit and these ancient Gnostic scriptures that talk about how the mother of matter is the mother of demons, and we're in this very dark, dense vibrational form, and we were tricked to get here and to get to God, to get to source. Even the planetary alignments have been manipulated, and everything has been manipulated to get to that path. And even once you start evolving, you're constantly at battle and wars and looking out for these serpents that are trying to bring you back down to their level, just like suck you down. And I'm starting to think that maybe this mark of the beast type thing and the number of man is 6 threefold. So the carbon atom is 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. And also, maybe we are the, as scary as this sounds, folks, what if we are already the representation of the Antichrist? What if this physical body that we are in is a form of Antichrist? No matter how much you believe in Jesus, no matter how much you follow certain scriptures or text, whatever, you are in, like what they say about Rome. When you're in Rome, do like the Romans do. Are we already in the image?
Rex?
What's that?
Only if you want to stay alive.
Nanny, I don't understand. What do you mean?
Well, when in Rome, do what the Romans do, or else they're going to kill you.
Right. Yes, I will kiss your ring, Pope. Oh, yes, you are so mighty. Man, I'll tell you, though, I guess here's another interesting thing. People follow these religions and these scriptures, and they kind of turn a blind eye based upon the information that has been force-fed to them and kind of sculpted their idea about these scriptures. Like you said, certain doctrines of doom and gloom. It's this carrot at the end of the stick. Follow that carrot. You'll get there one day. Just keep going. Keep going.
Rex, people holler at me and say things about me. That's okay. I'm just trying to get people to think. If getting mad at me makes somebody think, my work here is done. If somebody wanting to beat me up makes them actually think, I'm going to prove this guy wrong, my work here is done. Or if they say, you know what, that's an interesting way to look at it, let me at least think and study. I'm like you, Rex. All I'm trying to do is get people to think for themselves and to consider information that they haven't considered before.
Elohim. Who are they?
Well, again, I'm a text guy, Rex. I go back to the text. If you go back to the Old Testament, it's very clear what Elohim is. The literal, sorry, my throat's bothering me a little bit. The literal definition of Elohim is gods and goddesses, male and female, more than one. And the book of Genesis says that's who made the heavens and the earth. That's who made us. We're made in their image, in our likeness. So if we follow just the Hebrew, the Elohim were the gods and goddesses that created the earth, and they literally have created us as Elohim in training. Rex, we
Even
are
on up.
the American gods.
Odin. I can't wait to get this painting of Odin that my friend Brady she's almost completed. And this is probably my favorite of all time. And Odin is like ripping his right eye out. It's pretty awesome. But I tell you, Jeff, every time you come on the show, you bring something new to the table, and I appreciate that. It's nice to dive into these scriptures and get a different point of view. So much appreciated. And, ladies and gentlemen, check out Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower, on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel. Also, make sure to go to his website, jeffreydaugherty.com. Any words of wisdom that you would like to share with us before we close out tonight?
Can I leave you with a prediction, Rex?
Absolutely.
As we're getting here into Revelation 13, I wish we could have got into Revelation 13. I wish we could have got into Revelation 19 and 20, where John actually shows us.
We've got time. I mean, if you want to go there, let's do it. If you got a few more minutes,
let's jump into Revelation 19 if we can. But I want to make this prediction because I think people are going to see it, and it's going to blow their minds when they see it. It won't be long, Rex, before we will see somewhere in a Catholic church, I don't know if it'll be in the Vatican or not, but you will see the Jesus that is nailed to the cross, the crucifix. You will see one of them come down off that cross, come to life, and talk to the people. You heard it here first, folks.
Unbelievable. The predictions. Now, another thing, too, that you came on the show and said recently is you feel that President Trump is going to be the ultimate negotiator, and he's going to work a deal out in Korea, and everybody's going to be happy. They're going to start, singing Kumbaya. And little Kim is actually going to start, he's going to start being happy. He's going to start tap dancing. He's going to follow the yellow brick road, and it's going to be okay.
Well, I see the Korean conflict being solved without a shot. Everything we're looking at now is the art of the deal. And I actually think that little Kim's probably going to go into exile in China, and the whole thing gets resolved peacefully between Russia, China, and the Koreas.
You think they'll merge South and North?
I think that's the ultimate long-term goal. I don't think we'll see it short-term, but I think you will see the Korean Peninsula united again. Probably within the next 25 years.
Okay. And so can we jump into Revelation 19?
Let's do it. Let's jump into Revelation 19. And the reason I say jump into Revelation 19 is because it's just a very clear indication of what I see as a false flag. Excuse me. Let's go to Revelation 4, not Revelation 19. My bad. Revelation 4. And it shows us what I believe is a very clear-cut prediction of a false flag and a alien-inspired false flag that's going to attempt to be perpetrated on us. Rex, what is your gut reaction to such a statement, just without even looking into the text?
A false flag of extraterrestrials?
Yeah.
In Revelation. Yeah, okay. I mean, I've thought about the Borg cube descending from outer space, so that's not far off.
Absolutely. I agree.
Now it's getting exciting, folks. This is what I was waiting for.
If you look in Revelation chapter 4, and again, this is a guy that was in 100 AD, 95, 96, 97, 100 AD. And he's trying to describe things with the technology and the knowledge that he had at that time. It's 2018. We understand things in a different way. So if I said to you, a door in heaven was opened, if I said to you in the literal Greek, a gateway opened before me in the skies, I heard a great pounding, quavering reverberation, and suddenly I lifted up and ascended in a blast of air. I was whisked away in a blast of air. What does that sound like to you?
Sounds like the dream I had last night.
It does, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound like a wormhole opened up or a portal opened up and this guy was sucked through it?
Yeah. Or it sounds like a teleportation, I mean, that's beam me up, Scotty. Certainly it's. So let's get into that then.
And what I just read was the beginning of Revelation chapter 4. John says, I looked and beheld a door was open in the heaven. The literal English of that is a gateway opened before me in the skies. And then he says, I heard a great noise, which is a pounding, quavering reverberation. And if you've read the Nymans, or if you've read the other great UFO abductee studies, almost all of them hear a pounding, quavering reverberation before they are abducted. And then all of a sudden, John finds himself whisked away in a blast of air. And then this is actually a Bullard standard outline of abduction. Nyman's alternative outline of abduction lines up perfectly with that. And then all of a sudden, Rex, after what looks to me in 21st century eyes was a wormhole, a portal, a transportation device, a teleportation device, whatever, all of a sudden, John says, I'm standing in heaven and I'm looking at a throne. And it was a throne like jasper. It was a throne like emerald. And upon the seats, I saw 4 and 20 elders sitting. He saw 24 seats. He saw 24 elders sitting. They were clothed in white raiment. They had on their heads crowns of gold. Now let's just read that in the English for a second. I saw a seat in the heavenlies. Someone was sitting on it. His outward appearance was the color of bronze trimmed in red. Around his seat, on a floor that looked like it was emerald green, were 24 other seats. And there were beings that were dressed in cloaks that were brilliant, and they had bands on their head that looked like gold. And coming out of the center seat was lights and voices. Rex, have you ever been on the bridge of a military ship, or have you ever been in like a job control or mission control, military, paramilitary oriented type of a situation?
That's classified.
Okay. Well, personally, I spent 6 years in the United States Air Force, and our C-130 landed on aircraft carriers. I was privileged to look at the bridge of an aircraft carrier. I worked for a couple of years in what's called job control within my maintenance organization, and that whole scene right there described a central seat, seats around that central seat, people with gold things on their head, and voices and lights coming out of the chairs. Rex, that is a very colorful description of how a first century person might describe the bridge of a military ship, the job control center of a paramilitary organization. And even remember Captain Kirk's chair? What happened? It had lights on it that would flash, and voices came out of it, didn't they?
Yeah, it's like optogenetics, next level.
And again, 21st century viewing of what is being said here, it's very, very simple. I think it's very, very linear to say this guy got teleported up to a ship. He's looking at the bridge of the ship. That's exactly what bridges of ships look like. It's exactly what job control centers look like. And then it says there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which looked like the 7 spirits of God. Now, both Bullard and Nyman talk about abductees being given a tour of the ship, of the captor's vessel. That's exactly what we're seeing here. And Rex, how would a first century guy describe 7 view screens in front of him looking out into the reaches of space or overseeing maybe planet Earth? How would you, if you're a first century dude, explain 7 view screens in front of you?
Yeah, I mean, great question. You would have to come up with words and topics that you knew about at that time. So that's very interesting. And I'm also wondering if this is kind of similar to the, and I want to get your take on this after you finish this up, the Ezekiel's will.
Many people think that was a representation of a craft. And Rex, as this guy, and why I think the view screen lends even more credibility is because after he looks at these 7 spirits of gods, which sounds exactly like, to me, a view screen, what does he see? He sees the fire mixed with blood hurled down upon the earth. Hurled down from where? And how's he seeing it? Well, if he's on the bridge of a ship and he's looking through view screens down at the earth and he sees these weapons fired onto the earth, that makes perfect sense how he saw it hurled down upon the earth. And I mean, with Fukushima and with Agent Orange, we understand that things can be hurled down upon the earth, and that the earth can be burned up, the trees can be burned up, the grass can be burned up. And then he's looking, Rex, and he sees another blast of energy go out, and it goes into the seas, and the living creatures are killed, the ships are killed. Sounds exactly like a horrific biological agent, maybe like the Exxon Valdez. And then all of a sudden, he's standing on the same bridge, looking through the same view screens, and now he sees an attack on the inland waterways. And Rex, if you're trying to conquer a planet, if you're trying to conquer people, could you think of a better first strike strategy than to take out their vegetation and their water supply?
It's absolutely the act of war, the art of war as well. If you read that book,
Sun Tzu, classic.
Yeah.
You got to read it.
Yeah. So you think that this is actually? I mean, if you're going to go to that level, then the whole, I mean, the New Jerusalem that descends from heaven very well could be a craft. Then,
in my mind, again, strictly from the text, it's not a question of if it's a craft. It's a question of what kind of a craft it is, or is it a metaphorical rendering of a new order? But I've done the same calculations, Rex. I've done the same measurements. And if you look at, the chalcedon and the gold and all of the different stones, it really seems to be, at least to me, if somebody said to me, I really think this is a craft, there's not enough ammunition for me to conclusively prove they're wrong. Now, didn't you say you had come up to another take of it not being a craft?
Yeah, I mean, I've got two theories. My original theory was that it was definitely some type of craft that was descending from outer space. Mm-hmm. Now I'm kind of wondering if it could be metaphorical for like the tree of life, the Kabbalah, the different measurements could maybe link to a spiritual aspect of self and numerology and sacred geometry. So if you look through these different parts of the tree of life that's also connected to vibrations and sounds mm-hmm. and planetary bodies, maybe it's more in reference to getting to a certain level spiritually. Right. Or maybe it's both. I mean, it could be both as well. So
there you go. And each person having 144,000 acres, that's a profound discovery, Rex. That's good work.
It's pretty wild. Yeah. I mean, if you put it together, I thought it was fascinating. And thank you for that. I've always been fascinated with Revelation. It's always been my favorite. And maybe it's because when I was just a little kid, I mean, well, I guess I was a teenager, a little kid. I mean, pretty much, I mean, I was 13. I was warned about the mark of the beast. Yep. And how in the future they're going to have these microchips that you're going to have to take. And if you don't take the microchip, then you're going to get your head cut off. You're going to get put into a concentration camp. And like you've got to, and if you take that chip, then your soul is gone forever for eternity. And this guy really freaked me out. I mean, and so I used to kind of worry about that. And there's a lot of other people that have gone under this mind control programming of this fear factor based programming, thinking that this mark of the beast is going to come and your soul is going to be gone if you take it. But I mean, maybe this revelation does just have so many different points that it's like a warning book. It's a manual that gives you an idea on what could happen in the future, but it's also, like you said, it's describing things that have happened in the past, but maybe if they happen in the past, they're going to happen in the future again.
Well, let me run through this and get to the one of the big things I want to bring out before we run out of time. So he attacks all the waterways, and then the fourth angel sounds his trumpet, and an attack is launched on other heavenly bodies. We've got a proliferation of space weapons right now, Rex, weaponized satellites. So we know that this actual thing could be very, very plausible. And then when you get to that fifth angel, the fifth angel sounds a trumpet, or the fifth angel sends a signal. And again, here's a guy on the bridge of a ship looking through view screens. Here's this signal being sent out. And all of a sudden, as this signal is sent out, from the smoke, from the abyss comes a smoke like a giant furnace. The sun and sky are darkened by these locusts that have the power, and we talked about these earlier, to sting and to take away peace from the earth and to torment men. And Rex, again, from a 21st century point of view, it's very easy to see that this could be a perfect first century description of the launching of a fleet of drones, maybe from an underground base. And Rex, this is being ripped from our headlines. We see this stuff happening all the time. And again, They're not to harm the good people, just the bad people. And they don't kill them. They're using non-lethal type of weaponry. And then we see, what these locusts look like: horses prepared for battle, crowns of gold, faces that look like human faces, breastplates of iron. The wings were like the thundering of horses and chariots. Man, if that's not descriptions of helicopters or drones, then I don't know what it is. Sixth angel says, hey, look, dry up Euphrates. Here comes an army. Sounds like the release of ground troops for me. To me, very, very clear. And where it really gets interesting to me is when we get to Revelation 19 and carries on with the Lord. I saw heaven open. Here comes somebody on a white horse. He that sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. Everybody thinks this is God, Rex. Don't you think it's like the second coming of Christ?
Right. That's what people think that, your typical mindset, religious mindset, Christian ideology would be. That is absolutely.
Well, with your permission, can we just look at this real fast with a 21st century point of view?
What is it?
Can we look at this real fast in a 21st century point of view?
Please. Yeah.
So again, we see heaven open. There's our wormhole again. There's our opening in the skies. Here comes a white horse. Now, to a first century guy, all they know about are horses. So was it a horse or not? Or was it just a means of conveyance? And he that sits on this horse or on this craft is called Faithful and True. What this says in the original Greek is, Rex, that it's called out that he's faithful, he's trustworthy. It's called out that he's true. It's called out that he's genuine. It doesn't say that he is these things. It says that it's called out that he is these things. And why that is very, very important, I think, is when you get down to the next verse, it talks about his eyes were like a flame of fire. On his head were many crowns. He had a name written that no man knew. And if you look at that in the original Greek to English, there were eyes or lamps that were like burning flames. And on the top, where the two walls met, there were ornamental bands. Sounds like a craft, Rex, but here's where it really, really, really gets interesting. And he had a name that no man knew. Now, in religious language, that sounds so holy. It sounds so interesting. But what it really means, Rex, literal, not Jeff Daugherty version, not Jeff Daugherty's thoughts, but literal Greek to English, it says, he had a name, character, and reputation that he was covering and hiding as with a cloth. Whoever this being is, Rex, he is purposely hiding his true identity, his true name, and his true character. And Rex Bear, man, myth, legend, if it's really God, what kind of a God hides his name, hides his character, and tells us it's somebody else if he's really God?
That's a great question. Absolutely. And it's funny because I was reading through some of the older Mesopotamian tablets that predate a lot of the stuff in the Bible. And this one creation story that could possibly be the oldest creation story from Babylonia, ancient Mesopotamia, the one line that's missing is the author. Like these ancient tablets will have the first line that'll describe, who basically put that together or who inscribed. It doesn't mean they're the original author, but that one line is gone. Everything else is there but that. And it's like, just like everything else, that one missing component that could just answer everything. We don't know in the public, and that's what we're searching for. It's crazy and fascinating at the same time.
So Rex, this guy that shows up and says, I'm God, but it says his name, his character, his reputation, he's hiding from us. He shows up religiously. It says he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. Sounds holy, sounds righteous. Literally rendered, Rex, again, this is just straight from Greek to English. And he is wrapped in a garment that is stained with hemorrhaging, splattering blood. He's wrapped in a garment that is stained with hemorrhaging, splattering blood, and it's called out and proclaimed that he's the Word of God. We've just heard that he's hiding his real name. He's a red-handed killer covered with blood, and he's trying to tell us he's the Word of God. One thing we know for sure, he's not the Word of God because he's hiding his real name. Rex Bear, who is this?
Well, and that's another interesting thing is if you know somebody's name, a lot of ancients and
Ooh,
people that study mysticism and the occult and knowledge that would be considered spiritual or something like that, if you know somebody's real name, then you can bring them back from the dead. You can actually summon them and harness them and use their energies. So a lot of people actually have secret names when they're born in specific cultures that only they
right.
know. And maybe that's why.
Well, Rex, as unusual as it is for me to be controversial, what if the real name of this being is Yahweh, Lord, Jehovah, Marduk, God, and he's hiding it so you won't know who he is, so you won't be able to say his name and empower people to realize that it might all be a sham. And he says he's God, Rex, but he comes back killing people, destroying people, wrecking the earth. I don't know about you, but it doesn't sound to me like the actions of a righteous and true God. And it looks to me like John is warning us, listen, when this guy shows up, he says he's God, but he's really hiding his name. He's covered in garments, splattered by hemorrhaging blood, and he is killing people and taking names. I think John might be saying to us, do you think that you might want to reconsider whether this really is the God of the universe? And do you want to reconsider if maybe you might not want to embrace such a being or such a scenario? But what do I know? I'm just a apostate guy that spreads heresy and is an Illuminati shape-shifting crystal ball reader. So pay no attention to me. Nothing to see here. Move along.
Just read the crystal ball and all the information is in there. Wow. Very good points, Jeff. I really appreciate you once again coming on the show, and I'll definitely have you back on again soon. Ladies and gentlemen, check out Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower, on YouTube, also jeffreydaugherty.com. And Jeff, thanks, man. This has been awesome.
It's my honor and my privilege, Rex. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, be excellent to each other and be the change